ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very happy to see that today there are lots and lots of people. For the last few episodes, we've been struggling to get an audience, so this really, really makes my heart soar. This is Moksha Talks episode 8, but before we go on, I'd like to thank the Creative Arts Academy for kindly allowing us to host our shows here. It's the fourth one since we started doing our shows. The first one was in February, and it's been wonderful to have your hospitality, and thank you very much. Today we are in conversation with Mr. SV Raman, commonly known as Raj Raman, and the topic, of course, is, as you all probably know, race cinema, the human and the universal. Mr. Raman, popularly known as Raj Raman, is a civil engineer. He was associated with Mueller Bhavan Kolkata and headed their cultural department for 35 years till 2010. Thereafter, he was program consultant to Victoria Memorial Hall for 13 years. For several decades, he has been a guest faculty for public speaking, communication, journalism, film, German at various institutions, and is a freelance journalist, translator, and interpreter. He is actively connected with several social and cultural organizations in various capacities and regularly moderates or judges debates and anchors panel discussions. He was the All India General Secretary of the Federation of Film Societies of India from 1988 to 1992 under Shatranj Ke Khilari as president. Presently, he is the president of Cine Academy, Inter-German Association, Shohai, and chairperson of the Creative Arts Academy, executive member of the Calcutta Debating Circle, governing committee member of Manovikas Kendra, managing trustee of Kolkata Trust for Human Development and Kalpanichar Foundation, among others. Welcome, Raju, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Can we have a round of applause for you?
Thank you. Thank you for those wonderful words of introduction. It sounded like carrying coal to Newcastle because most of the people here
know you. I know, but it's still, this is for a YouTube audience, so please don't forget that. I know Raju on a personal level, as we were colleagues in school, and we shared a staff room, and we used to wait for him to come into the staff room with his one-liners. And he usually, on a very dull and tiring day, if we knew he was in the building, we could look forward to a moment of laughter, and he would always come up with something funny, something witty, and I'm not sure whether Ray's films offer much. I'm sure he will find a way to make that even funny, but we'll wait until what he does with this
There is
show.
always a ray of hope.
There you are. This is the month of May. I cannot imagine not celebrating Shatranj Ke Khilari. Of course, his birthday is over, but we thought better late than never. Akira Kurosawa once wrote, "Not to have seen the cinema of Ray means existing in the world without seeing the sun or the moon." How else can you describe the man's genius? We chose to specifically talk about the human and the universal as the general theme. And Ray is too big a subject, so we had to narrow it down to a particular theme. Otherwise, the discussion would be very, very kind of unruly. So let us first look at the choice of the subjects, from the human dignity and tragedy in the Apu Trilogy, to the resilience of the human spirit in Mahanagar, to the strong anti-war message through a children's fable in Gopika and Bagabain, to the triumph of punishment over crime in his popular detective films, to the fall of feudalism, to religious dogmatism. He's done it all and more. So, Raju, how do you bring in this blend between the human and the universal in the choice of the subjects?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me here. You have spread out a huge canvas now with those few sentences that you spoke over here, because that covers almost the entire gamut of Ray's works, right? And sitting here, I cannot recollect the last occasion when I was kind of so, what is the word I use? Overwhelmed or intimidated, confronted by so many teachers and even flanked by one. But we will see how we go about it. Yes, Satyajit Ray, of course, came into filmmaking because, you see, any person in the creative arts, and cinema is one of the most recent forms of it. And Mrinal Sen always used to say, cinema is a kind of bastard culture because it is borrowed from all the other forms of culture and has incorporated them into cinema as such, and has that distinct advantage where you can use dance, you can use music, you can use architecture, you can use photography, you can use a lot of things, right? So it is a platform that offers you several possibilities. And Satyajit Ray, when he was also earlier in Shantiniketan and was doing art and later on was in advertising, realized the potential of this medium, probably, and according to things that he has said on public platforms and even written about, or even personal conversations that I have had with Subroto Mitra, his first cinematographer, who did not agree always with Satyajit Ray. You see, it was when the Renoir brothers came to Calcutta to film The River, that is when, his kind of curiosity and his inquisitiveness to know a little bit more about this medium got kindled to a point of no return. And Subroto da used to tell me always that Satyajit Ray also had a nickname, they called him Dhanga. Okay. So he said, Dhanga to samne jabe na, amader samne jete dito. To bolto it was our duty to go every day to see what the Renoir brothers were doing and then report faithfully back to him. Right? And he would listen very carefully and even note down details of what was happening. And the one line that struck both these people at that time was that the Renoir said, filmmaking to us is like a religion. And that is a thing that stuck with these people also. So then came the Apu Trilogy, because the link between literature and this new medium of cinema was kind of inseparable as far as Satyajit Ray was concerned, because it ran in the family, and of course he had this huge fascination for literature, whether it be Bhuvati Bhushan or whether it be Rabindranath or whatever. So that is the kind of material that he drew from for his initial films and for this trilogy, as we call it now. And of course, to his advantage was also that he had big names to work with him. He had Munshi Chandragupta to do his artwork, he had Subroto Mitra to do his cinematography, though Subroto Mitra did not have a background in movie cinematography earlier. He used to do still photographs, but he saw some kind of potential and talent in him and thought that, together they could form a formidable team and make a good work of it, which did happen, but not without controversies, its share of controversies, because Subroto Mitra was a very, very finicky man. He was a man who wanted perfection in everything. And Satyajit Ray did not want to wait for that perfection because he was losing time whenever he was making films, because he was making films with kind of equipment which were archaic compared to the kind of equipment that other world filmmakers were using. So it was a challenge in some kind of way, but he also had names like Ravi Shankar working for him, doing the music for his initial films. So all this combined together, catapulted him to a kind of fame. Of course, that was not without obstacles too, because Potet Panchali was made for some time and then it had to be abandoned because of lack of money. And it was then that his mother, who knew Bidhan Ray, went up to him and said, ছেলেটা কি করার চেষ্টা করছে বায়োস্কোপ ফায়োস্কোপে তো আটকে গেছে একটু কি সাহায্য করা যাবে? And Bidhan Ray said, হ্যাঁ দেখি কি what can be done. and he provided funds from the PWD department, which is the Public Works Department. And it is a matter of coincidence that Potet Panchali's English title was also the Song of the Road later on. You see, so then when it went to the Cannes Film Festival and won an award, that's when people sat up and said, yeah, okay, because people thought this is a very local story, rooted in Bengal, rooted in rural Bengal, and with a little bit of surrounding India coming in between. How is the world audience going to take it? But it proved to be a huge success, and that is why we have this topic today, that is the human and the universal, because there are certain human problems, certain human emotions, certain human conditions which are universal. And that is why Ray, by addressing these subjects, first in his trilogy and then later on in other films, has appealed to the rest of the world in a manner that took him also by surprise in a way. Yeah? Of course, there was the usual accusation of his peddling poverty and things like that, but these are things you will have critics wherever. When you are doing a good work, there will be enough critics to be at your throat all the time, right? So from the trilogy, where he shows the travails of this family, and the kind of transitions that Apu goes through when he comes from the rural to the urban and has to adjust himself to a kind of situation, and then the tragedies that happen in the family, and how one overcomes these tragedies with a kind of filmic progression and a filmic language, which certainly was influenced by Italian neorealism, which Ray has admitted himself that Bicycle Thieves was a great influence on him. But not only the Bicycle Thieves, but even earlier Hollywood films like Stagecoach and so on, because he was fascinated by the magic that cinema created, right? And with this kind of influence, you also pick up certain elements where you find a language which is visual and transcends the barrier of language wherever you show these things. And it is a language of humanity. Like when Harihar passes away, and then you have that scene of all the birds flying away, like the soul flying away. Any part of the world you show it, people will understand what it is all
symbolism,
about.
yes.
Yeah, because symbolism is a thing where if you make it too culture specific sometimes, then it is difficult for audiences in other parts of the world to follow.
To relate to.
Yeah, like if somebody comes and says that, somebody's husband has died, and somebody comes and removes your sidur over here, and then foreign audiences will say, what is happening? What the hell is happening? Or you break the bangles and things they won't understand, because they are not used to those kind of cultural nuances. Specifics,
so,
right?
You might agree with this, that when he was making the trilogy, there were films like Chinnamool, Raj Raman. These films also, Raj Raman was after this.
Chinnamool was early.
Yes, there were other films also, I'm forgetting the names, which were talking about the rootlessness of people.
Yeah, you see.
Wanted to find their roots.
Yeah, you see, Chinnamool was based on rootlessness, because there are people who have concentrated on films of rootlessness caused by partition, like Ritik Ghatot later on and so on. So Chinnamool was, of course, one of the earlier films. And Satyajit Ray, although he was not very much an active part of the IPTA, it was happening around him. His other colleagues were part of it. Mrinal Sen was a part of it, Sholil Chaudhary was part of it, Utpal Datto was part of it, Shobha Sen was part of it. So people around were all part of it. But when we talk of that, we should also say that Satyajit Ray, even in his later life, was not very social in that sense. He liked to keep to himself, do his studies, and people used to go to him, but he did not go to a lot of places on his own except when his films were shown and so on. So this story of the trilogy then, and the kind of impact that it made on audiences, triggered him to make other human stories because there were these convictions that he had grown up with. Yeah? And I can understand very well these kind of convictions when they come out and get reflected in his films, like the other film, say when in Devi he talks about the dogma of
religious dogmatism.
religious dogmatism. And he has made it very, very clear that he is not against Hindutva as such, because at that point of time, people thought he was making a film against Hindutva.
Because he wasn't a Hindu himself, he was a Brahmo.
And that was the allegation made against him,
That's
that
right.
he was a Brahmo, and that's why he was attacking dogmatic Hinduism, you see. And I wonder how people would have reacted if such a film had been made today. You see, in today's age and time.
Yeah,
so, about this Devi, I would like to show you a clip over here where he talks himself about.
And again, Devi was literature.
I once made a film called The Goddess, Devi. It dealt with religious dogmatism. It didn't attack religion as such. It attacked dogmatism, the extreme form of religion. But people were writing in the papers that, because Mr. Ray is not a Hindu, he was a Brahmo, he's making such films against Hinduism and all that. But they are stupid people, you can't take them into account. This happens in India all the time. And people don't, we have a fairly backward audience here, I must say, in spite of the film society movement and all that. If you consider the large audience, it's a backward audience, unsophisticated audience, exposed to the commercial Hindi cinema more than anything else. And so, you face this problem, but you make the kind of films, I make the kind of films that I want to make. I make the kind of films that I enjoy making, that engages my attention, my creativity. That's all I can do.
Yeah, but then what he meant was the larger audience and the kind of fare that was dished out to them, in general. And which is why he said that, in spite of the film society movement, because that addressed only a very small section of the population.
Very niche segment.
Yeah. And he himself has been the president of the Federation of Film Societies since 1959, when it was formed, till he died. Okay. So he was very much at the helm of the film society movement. But, because of his keeping busy all the time, he wasn't very active as a president of
As
the...
much as I hate this, but I need to go on to the next one.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. We cannot do a session on Show 33 without talking about his women protagonists.
Right.
So, should I mention a few and maybe you would want to talk about them?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's begin with Madhavi Mukhopadhyay's Aruti Mojumdar in Mahanagar.
Yeah.
That lipstick scene.
Yeah, now the lipstick scene is a very great scene, of course, yeah. Now, with Aruti in Mahanagar, of course, Satyajit Ray succeeded in doing two things. First, the city of Calcutta was projected there.
Yeah.
This film starts with that trolley of the tram, you see, so, and this Calcutta as such gets established also, and the kind of life that people lead, or the middle class people lead. And it is also a kind of period where people are struggling to make both ends meet. And a single income in a family is not enough. So there comes the question of another person also having to earn for the family. But traditionally, this has not happened before. And in this context, I must say that, even in Mahanagar, there is this other Anglo-Indian lady who comes in.
That's right.
Recently, I did a conversation with Barry O'Brien on his book on the Anglo-Indians. And there he emphasizes the point that, in a way, the Anglo-Indian women were trendsetters for the Indian women here to go out of their homes and start working over there.
Teachers.
Teachers.
Yeah, so
in the
many of
education
them.
field, in the education field, certainly. Teachers. And not only teachers, also confidential secretaries.
Secretaries.
But that's a middle class Indian woman.
Yeah.
Working class Indian woman has always worked.
No, if you're talking of the lower classes of Indian women, they have always worked because they had no choice. Because the men used to be drunkards and lie around the whole day, so those women had to work in any case. You see, that's a different story altogether.
But I think we should mention that, I mean,
Yes, it's correct.
To forget this.
No, I'm saying that this is, we are talking about urban women, the middle class urban women. And here, let us see a little clip from Mahanagar. See this sense of insecurity of entering
That
such a big
pose.
house, the gate. So she just chickened out. Charulata is not only his favorite, it's a favorite of a lot of people.
Lot of people.
Because regarding Charulata, it's taken from Nostrini, and he himself has said in his Amal Bhattacharjee lectures that you see it was a huge challenge because Rabindranath Tagore has described the loneliness of a woman over 20 pages. And he said, how do I show it on cinema? In cinema, I have to find a cinematic equivalent of it. And there he said that in a person's life there are two kinds of loneliness. One is the loneliness of young age, and the other one is the loneliness of old age. So the loneliness of young age is when you're full of energy, you want to do a lot of things, there are so many things you could do, but which you are not able to do. You're shackled type, which is what we will see in the opening sequence of Charulata. And there is a kind of loneliness of old age where you're always suspicious that you're being left out. Yeah, like many of the Pishis or the Nonods or the Didas or the Dadus of the house, hey, amake chhede ki bola hocche re, ki plan kara hocche? This is a kind of loneliness that makes them ask that kind of question. You feel left out. So he distinguished between these kinds of loneliness and said Charu's loneliness was a loneliness of young age. And then I start asking myself, what does such a lonely woman do? How does she spend her day? And I have to portray those activities on the screen. Now, if you look at this opening sequence, you will see that this is a rare case in cinema because in cinema, time can be used in different ways. You can either compress time or you can expand time. You can expand an incident of 1 minute and make it 45 minutes if you want to, or you can skip 3 generations and contract time and then skip on to something else. So here, real time and real time coincide. That is the opening sequence of Charulata. Every frame here is significant. See, she is embroidering the letter B, which we realize much later in the film that it's for the Bhupati.
So this continuous shooting of the embroidery would be how she kills time.
Yeah, this is only one of the actions. This is used during the titles.
Yeah.
Then she moves on to other activities.
Yeah.
You will see. Yeah, this is one way of killing time.
Killing time. That's
But
what
at the
I'm
same
asking.
time, it is also reflecting an affection for a husband whom she doesn't get to see very
See it
much.
all.
Sorry, this is absolutely my representation. I also feel that knitting itself,
Stitching.
this is showing something about family
Together.
together. Keep the family.
Yeah.
It's a tradition.
Horror.
Horror.
But this has been a practice among elder people at home and the other people also. Probably, yes, you're right, that it's trying to knit and keep the family together. Very, very right.
And also, as you rightly said, Shami Mukherji bhalabashata.
Exactly.
Dependence stuff.
These are de-stressing.
Yeah,
These folks.
right. Now he establishes time through the chime of the clock. See, he is using all these cinematic elements over here of sound, chime of the clock. Chimes 4 times. চারটে বেজে গেছে। And this little line saying that Babu ke cha diye show also implies that Babu is working at home somewhere.
And that she's very particular.
Absolutely. This clip we have to see in entirety because each frame is important. You're hearing street noises, yeah?
Yeah.
So, going in and out of these rooms is actually establishing the architecture of that floor of Bhupati's house.
So a rich woman is boredom.
Yeah. Yeah. Now listen, this is also very significant. Bong kim, bong kim, bong kim, bong kim. She is trying to hunt for a book of Bong Kim. He's establishing that she is an educated person. She reads Bong Kim.
And she's taken out Kopal Kuntola.
Yeah. So it doesn't require any dialogue as such. Now, he doesn't rush through the scene at all. He wants to show that full 7 minutes of the opening sequence, as to what all she does. Now you hear the monkey man outside. Now there is a child in her also, which gets very excited about this monkey man.
And the Khorkhuri window.
Yeah, the shutters that way.
Shutters. Yeah.
So these opera glasses or lorgnette as they were called, she fishes that out of the drawer, comes, and as she is not able to go to the outer world, she is bringing the world closer to herself. And then there's some people carrying a palanquin, also establishing that it is a Jomindar milieu where people used to be carried on palanquin. And then comes this amusing man with the umbrella and a honey of sweets. And she finds him very amusing because this is the childlike thing in her, finding common things very exciting. And you can see the smile on her face. She wants to dwell with him a little bit more, so he goes to the other window.
Yeah, she's keeping these.
characters he chooses, even for these insignificant roles.
And this lorgnette that he used is also a kind of motive in this film, because later on, if you remember the film with Apu, this script where the article has come out, is through the railings, you see that in that fashion. You see, this music is so infectious and addictive that you start humming it also yourself. Now he makes her sit at the piano. The audience might think that she can play the piano, but we don't know. Probably she cannot play the piano. She's just tinkering around with the piano.
But it's part of the rich man's
Yeah.
house.
And now comes the husband. Doesn't look at her at all.
And the hurt on her face.
Yes, the hurt on her face. And the watch shows exactly what the time is, the clock. Yeah, because the whole thing started at 4, he said 4 beje geche. He's just looking up something. And in a kind of act of resignation, so to speak, she puts the lorgnette to her eyes, trying to draw him closer to herself. And the hand drops.
So while on the subject of this outside and inside, I mean, obviously we have to talk about Ghore Baire. But what would be the essential differences? Maybe we don't need to do this in great detail because we are already a little short.
You see, Ghore Baire was made much later. Though the story is set in a different milieu, right? In Ghore Baire, what I would interpret is that Ray is trying to show that even not the kind of urban middle class women, but also aristocratic women want to take part in certain activities which could be their kind of idea of nationalism, and they have an opinion about what is right and what is wrong. So, if somebody asks, Bengal's partition, ওটা কি ঠিক হয়েছিল? There's a dialogue in the film. না আমার তোমার মন কি বলে? So sometimes there is a little dialogue where he said, don't use your intellect. What does your heart say? What is your spontaneous reaction? And Bimala says, ঠিক হয়নি, মোটেই ঠিক হয়নি। আমাদের আপত্তি করা উচিত।
Is she the new woman?
It is the new woman, but at a time when there was no avenue for these kind of new women. But these were kind of women, if you see, inspired by the other freedom fighters and so on and so forth, then there is a category of women, who are as emotional, as patriotic about their country.
As rooted.
Yeah. So this is something that is not accepted at every milieu of society, and I think Ray wanted to bring this out, that it is not that the women did not want to participate.
In my research, I read about this, that with Charulata and with Bimala, I believe there is a comparison with Ibsen's A Doll's House.
Yes, that is a comparison that is drawn everywhere where it is written about. But I think that's a little far-fetched.
That's a little far-fetched.
I would say so.
Between Charulata and Goethe-Institut, what I felt, maybe rather than you would agree, that both the women were objects.
Yeah.
The thing is, for the first time, what Noshtumir fails to address is a short story. Ray addresses the idea of sexual emancipation. Here, Imola is kind of sandwiched between her desire for being a part of the mainstream, which is now fighting the new age patriotism, and also the carnal desire for Shondi.
Yeah.
কারণ এই দুই মহিলাই তো সমস্ত যৌন শক্তি থেকে বঞ্চিত, and they both which the woman in অরণ্যের দিনরাত্রি কাবেরী বোস comes and tells শুভেন্দু আমাকে কেমন লাগছে.
Yeah, of course. But these kind of subtle nuances come in different films.
Of course it
See,
does.
even if you take Charulata, the kind of need for that kind of affection
Right.
is there even when the women themselves, lie on the same bed, have a certain kind of affection towards each other. So there is that need which is portrayed in some way in all the films.
The libido is underlying. That's it.
Okay, since you've talked about Aronni Dinratri, I have to ask you about Duli
Yeah.
and that Simi's portrayal of it.
Yeah.
And again, my research tells me that apparently Shautal women, they were properties of the father,
Yes.
and then once they were married, they become, they're handed over to the husband.
Right.
Now, Duli remains a problematic figure who is at the same time a foil, a submissive figure, a rebel, a victim of cultural stereotype, and a licentious character.
Yeah, but then you see, when it comes to these kind of characters, I think Ray also wanted to bring out the kind of hypocrisy that exists in urban middle class families, because the kind of
Licenses that they take.
and that it comes automatically to tribal women sometimes, which is they don't have to work for it, they don't have to fight for it most of the time. And so it is a kind of hypocrisy of this class, which he wanted to, I think, have a satirical address on.
I'm a little unhappy with the portrayal, to be honest, because what finally comes out is Shomi wanting to sleep with him, with her, Robi Ghosh wants to sleep with her. Everything is about how attractive she is.
Yeah, but that is what the urban young men were all about.
Of course.
Yeah, so
So that's harassment in a way.
Yeah, it's harassment.
do you want to see a little bit of
Maybe just a little bit, because there are so many other things to talk about.
And also Robi Ghosh speaks with his eyes.
From that cultured, westernized woman that she was. How?
And then later when she actually comes,
देना है कि चाहिए देना
ए बाबू
হরি হরি কি হরি হরি করছিস দেখেন তাই কে
बाबू देना बाबू देना बाबू आधा पौआ
আধা পাওয়া
आधा पौआ
তুই তুই আরো খাবি কি নাম তোর মিস ইন্ডিয়া চাপ
see
You know,
the timing of his dialogue.
কি নাম বল বল
টাকা দিল
500 টাকা দিল
500 টাকা দিল বড়
Anyway, we'll cut that short, but this kind of character, of course, what you say, Shujoy, there are opinions about how it has been portrayed, yeah? I think it was not a very ideal portrayal of a tribal woman like that. Yeah, right.
Okay, Aditi Sengupta in Nayok. Perhaps the one woman who saw through Arindam Mukherjee's insecurities and the fact that he was not what he projected himself to be. I found that woman character really, really powerful. I mean, I don't know whether everyone... Mone rekhe debo. So,
Just take a look at that. That's a wonderful scene, actually.
yeah, it is. It really is.
এবারে কি মাস্টার তো বোন
আপনাকে একটু বিরক্ত করবো ভাবছিলাম।
বিরক্ত?
অবশ্যই আপনার যদি আপত্তি থাকে আপনি রিফিউজ করতে পারেন।
বিরক্ত হতে আপত্তি?
না ঠিক আপনাকে কতগুলো প্রশ্ন করতে চাইছি।
আপনি কি সাংবাদিক নাকি মশাই?
না, একটা মেয়েদের পেপার এডিট করি।
আধুনিক, আপনি বসুন না। এতে চলচ্চিত্র নেই নিশ্চয়ই?
আপনার সঙ্গে একটা ইন্টারভিউ নিয়ে স্বভাবটা পূরণ করতে চাইছিলাম। আপনাকে যখন পেয়েছি মানে আপনি তো কাছাকাছির মধ্যেই রয়েছেন, আর সত্যি কথা বলতে কি পপুলারিটির দিক থেকে আপনি তো সবচেয়ে উপরে। কাজে
দেখুন, আমার এই জীবনের জিনিসটা এতবার এত জায়গায় বেরিয়েছে যে আপনার মতো এই ছোট্ট ছাটকা দু একজন ছাড়া আর সবাই তা মোটামুটি জানে।
তারা যেটুকু জানে সেটুকু বোধহয় আমিও জানি।
বটে,
যেমন আপনি খুব অল্প বয়সে বাবা মাকে হারিয়েছেন, কাকার বাড়িতে মানুষ হয়েছেন, বঙ্গবাসী কলেজ থেকে পাশ করেছেন, কিছুদিন একটা অফিসে চাকরিও করেছেন, তারপর 27 বছর বয়সে প্রথম ছবি, খুব অল্প সময়ের মধ্যেই প্রচুর খ্যাতি, নাম, টাকা, আর এখন আপনি বিয়ে করেন।
আপনি হচ্ছে ব্যাচেলার নাকি? অতি আধুনিকারা মাথায় সিঁদুর লাগান না কোনটা?
Intentionally uses the word apni bachelor.
আপনার সম্বন্ধে যেসব লেখা বেরিয়েছে সেসব লেখা কিন্তু খুব ইন্টারেস্টিং।
তা আপনার মধ্যে ইন্টারেস্টিংটা কি?
যেমন ধরুন, যে প্রশ্নটা সবচেয়ে আগে মনে হয়, এটা একটা দারুণ খ্যাতি, এটা কেমন লাগে?
বেশ তো ভালোই তো, মনে কি?
কিন্তু কিন্তু যে এত বেশি করে পাওয়া, এর মধ্যে একটা একটা ভাগ, একটা অভাব, কোনো রিগ্রেটস নেই।
এসব জেনে কি হবে? সব কথা বলে দিলে যদি আমাদের বাজারটা নষ্ট হয়ে যায়। দেখুন মিস সেনগুপ্তা, আমাদের খুব বেশি কথা বলতে নেই। আমরা ছায়ার জগতে বিচরণ করি তো, কাজে কাজে আমাদের রক্ত মাংসের জ্যান্ত শরীরটা জনসাধারণের সামনে বেশি করে তুলে না ধরাই ভালো। বুঝলেন কিছু? কিছু বোঝেন নেই?
বোধহয় বুঝেছি।
কি বুঝলেন?
এই যে আপনারা জনসাধারণের চোখের সামনেও ওই নায়ক হয়ে থাকতে চান, এই তো?
এক্স্যাক্টলি।
তাহলে
তাহলে তাহলে আর কিছু নেই।
তাহলে
জানান মশাই, জানান একটা কোল্ড ড্রিঙ্ক দখল করতে দিন, তাহলে কাগজে ফস করে লিখে দেবেন যে অরিন্দম মুখার্জি ম্যানার্স চ্যানেল।
আর তাতেও বুঝি আপনাদের বাজার নষ্ট হয়ে যাবে?
নিশ্চয়ই। আপনারা এলাকার কোনো খবরই রাখেন না, খালি ঠান্ডা ঘরে হাত পা ছড়িয়ে বসে ছবি দেখেন, না বেরিয়ে এসে বলেন যে
তাই? তবে আপনাদের বাজারটা যত ঠুনকো তা সত্যিই জানতাম না। তাহলে কখনই আপনাকে বিরক্ত করতে আসতাম না।
মিস সেনগুপ্তা, আপনি জীবনে উন্নতি করবেন।
ইচ্ছে তো আছে, তবে আমাদের উন্নতির জন্য পরিশ্রম করতে হবে।
আর আমরা তুলোর গতিতে বসে পায়ের উপর পা তুলে উন্নতি করবো, হয়তো?
হয়তো তাই।
একান্তই ঠান্ডা তাহলে কিছু খাবেন
না, থ্যাংক ইউ।
The thing is, no, in this context, I want to say that this kind of characterization of Nayok that he has done, it's my personal opinion. I find a lot of similarities with Satyajit Ray's character also. He didn't socialize very much. He wanted to stay in the halo that was around him, you know. And to a large extent, I think he kept to that. That you see that
Chaya Jagat.
has had Jagat.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to his two non-Bengali films. I mean, enough has been written about how he was comfortable making films in Bengali, and he's given so many interviews where he says that he's comfortable with his own screenplay and he doesn't like the fact that somebody else is doing it for him, etc., etc. But and they're two very diverse films.
Right.
One is royalty, the other one is rural. So, what are your views on this?
You see, when he made Shatranj Ke Khilari, he has given an interview himself, where he says that I had been making a lot of films in the Bengali language, and there was a niche audience in Bengal for that and overseas, but it was irking him that he was not getting a larger audience at home, which is why he decided to make a film in Hindi. And these are his words, not mine. And the other thing was, he found that there were some excellent actors in mainstream cinema, and he thought that he would like to work with them at some point of time. Particularly, he had struck up a friendship with Said Jaffrey, who was a man of theatre, and he had seen his performances and so on. And they had had a discussion where he said, maybe someday we can work together. And he found an opportunity with Shatranj Ke Khilari to translate that into action, and also to work with the likes of Amjad Khan and Sanjeev Kumar and so on and so forth. So he himself has said that I wanted to work with these people because they're very talented actors, and in a way he felt that they were wasting themselves in mainstream Bollywood cinema. Right?
What he's already said.
Yeah. What he has already said in
he's
another
already
interview.
said that.
So it is that urge which made him make it. Not only that, he had read the story of Shatranj, and the story had fascinated him. And another aspect which he says is also that he himself was an avid chess player. And was addicted to chess at some point of time. So all these factors put together made him take a decision to do that film. Of course, to create all that period atmosphere and so on, it was going to cost a lot of money. But here, Suresh Jindal came forward and produced the film, funded the film. So that was another kind of boon for him, that somebody came forward to fund this kind of film. The film had a lot of success at international festivals too. And there have been questions about, even in the foreign media, they asked him, when one watches the film, one has the feeling that there are two things happening parallel and that they don't unite in some way. And he said that was a very conscious kind of decision to keep these two things parallel. Separate. Because what the monarch is doing and what the others are doing over there, whiling their time away with chess and so on, is something that he really wanted to establish, because he thought that is a reality in a lot of situations, even in Jomidari here, where the actual Jomidar doesn't know what is going on. Actually going on, you see. So he found a kind of similarity in the kind of society that he had seen too. And of course he thought that this whole thing of somebody coming from Awadh to Kolkata is something that fascinated him too. So,
how about Sadgati?
Sadgati was a thing, I would say it was a kind of continuation of his intrinsic urge to talk about injustice and inequalities in society, particularly in the form of the caste system and so on. You see, at one level, he worked with religious dogmatism, and at another level, he was very disturbed by these inequalities through caste and so on and so forth. When he read Premchand's story, he liked it very much, and he thought that he would do it. And also, another factor that spoke for it was that Doordarshan commissioned it. Okay, so it was actually the state coming and giving him recognition in some way. And in this context, one has to say that the time when this film was made, see, early 70s, I think 73 was when Sadgati was made, no, later, 81, yeah. 83. So it was still a hangover of the golden era of Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which had Films Division under his umbrella, and it is through Films Division that he did his Rabindranath documentary film, and also the Inner Eye. See, so there is a little story behind that, because the success of the late 60s and the early 70s, many people do not know this, that when Lal Bahadur Shastri became Prime Minister in 1966, when Lal Bahadur Shastri died in 1966, Indira Gandhi became
the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister. And she was earlier the Minister of Information and Broadcasting. And during her regime, there were people like Dr. Ashok Mitra, the ICS, Dr. Ashok Mitra, who was Secretary of Information and Broadcasting. That's how people like Sukhdev and others came to make excellent films for Films Division. Because now when we teach films in Jadavpur University or wherever, when I used to, I showed them a film of Films Division and asked the students, how do you find the film? And to be polite, they used to say, bhalo hoyeche, chhobita khub bhalo hoyeche. So after listening to a lot of opinions, I used to say, this is exactly an example of how a documentary film should not be made. That's why I showed it to you. So then I showed them the good films of Films Division. So it was a golden era of that Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and when the state came forward to do as Doordarshan a film like that, Ray really actually lapped it up. Because think of today, that whether Doordarshan will commission a film like that? No. Times have changed, totally changed.
Okay.
And that was the idea, that he wanted to bring out this exploitation of the lower castes, and the indifference of the upper caste people, and the indifference between the Brahmin men and the women. It was the women who were more compassionate, even in these upper caste people. That is something he wanted to establish. You see, because basically, if you go to even Jomidar Badis and so on, the Malkin of the house is generally much more compassionate towards the working class and does a lot of things for them. This is another thing that I think he wanted to bring to the fore, that it is the male chauvinism and the male dominance which was causing all the harm in society, and not necessarily the women of that milieu also.
You mentioned Jomidar so many times, so maybe just a couple of lines about Jalshaghar.
Yes, about Jalshaghar, yes. You see, it's a fantastic film to bring out the milieu of the Jomidars, because it truly reflects what society was like at that period of time. And Jalshaghar stands out among these films during that period, because it was a kind of, if I were to use the expression, hatke film. Somehow
there is no formula for it.
It's no formula for it, and at the same time there was a kind of element of shikarukti, an element of confession of this is how our society was at a particular point.
I also find that the fact that we are talking about human and universal, I find this fall of feudalism.
Yeah.
That is very much something that the Western audience can also relate to.
Of course they do. Of course they do, because they understand feudalism much better than we do.
Correct.
Absolutely. And there is a little anecdote that Subrotoda told me about, that it was not in connection with Jalshaghar, but in connection with Poroshpatra. You know, the shooting of Porosh Pathor and the excellent role that Tulsi Chakraborty did, that which showed that, you know, comedy was also a forte. If you even take other films like Gopi Gain, Bagabain and Hirak Raja Deshe and so on, comedy was another forte of Satyajit Ray, particularly, you know, all in his dialogues, even in these little dialogues which in the clips that we saw, আপনাকে যখন পেয়েছি, হ্যাঁ, there's a subtle পেয়েছি মানে, you know, so that subtle kind of humor always came out in a lot of his dialogue writing. But the anecdote about the Porosh Pathor was that they were waiting for rain to come, you know, for a particular sequence, and they were at Esplanade East, and they were on the second or third floor of one of those offices over there, waiting for the rain to come. One camera, and it was Subroto Das camera, one chata, one assistant. So since morning they were waiting and no rain came. So then Manikda said, you can break for lunch. Okay, so rain is not coming. Then suddenly the rain came. Then Manikda rushed out with this camera, and Subroto Das says, I was tugging at his Punjabi because I was wanting to save my camera, and he was like a child. Hey, bishti eshe gache, go, let's go and shoot.
Yeah. Okay, about his political films, quote unquote. Ray apparently has told his biographer, Andrew Robinson, if you're a filmmaker, of course, your surroundings, politics, and whatnot make up the social milieu. That becomes relevant. From 1960 onwards, I was becoming more aware of my surroundings. Social milieus did form an integral component of Ray's work, with unemployment, the political unrest of 1970, and the miseries of a hapless population resulting in the Calcutta Trilogy. So, Pratidwandhi, Shimabadho, and John Order.
You see, that was a period when there were trilogies and more being made, you know, not only by Satyajit Ray but also by Pranal Sen.
Lots of people, yeah.
Because when we were students at Yadavpur University, we went to see Pratidwandhi and Interview in the hall at the same time. And there was always this discussion of which one was better. And invariably the people who saw Pratidwandhi first liked that better, and those who saw Interview first liked that better. So that was a matter of a different discussion. But of course, yes, because when we talk of politics today, we don't talk of politics, we only talk of party politics. We are talking of petty politics, yeah? Now that is not politics. Politics has become a dirty word. Now politics is not and should not become a dirty word, because we should be conscious politically of what is going on around us, and we should have a say in it, you see. If we are people with a conscience and people with what they call a merudondo, yeah, which in Shokti Babu's Kavita Hariye Geche, somebody looking at, there was a cartoon saying, table tolai khuje bedacche, je ki khuje bedacchen, bole merudondo, kothay je chole gelo jani na, you know. So we have trivialized politics to only maramari and party politics. But it is the responsibility of every responsible citizen to get interested in politics and have a say in whatever is going on. And that is precisely what happened in the 70s when these people did their trilogy and so on. It was happenings that were going on around them, you see. So I think this kind of politics came into not only some of his films, but also in a lot of his films, because if you even talk of Devi, there is politics there, you see. And if you talk of Hirak Raja Deshe, yeah, it's political satire of the highest order.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you even talk of Gopi Gain, you know, which is an entertainment for children, you know, if you read between the frames and between the layers, you'll find a lot of politics in that.
And also this gender politics and the way he looked at gender politics is so modern. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
I mean, there are two filmmakers for me whose gender politics is possibly even contemporary today. I mean, probably more ahead of their times. One is Ray and one is Tapan Shingo.
Yeah.
Very much.
Their gender politics is not similar at all.
No.
Ray was far more sublime, and this gentleman who's going to turn 100 in October.
In October.
His character trilogy, which is Akuni, Raja and Apunjam, talked about a different dimension of women in Calcutta.
Yeah.
And look at a film like Adala Ko Intimate. Now, where the woman talks about harassment, she, where, a film like Mahanagar Ray was one of the first filmmakers in his era to talk about misogyny.
Yeah.
I know other filmmakers were talking about it. That interview that he talks about Hindi commercial cinema in the 50s, before Portrayal, where mostly films with women were absolutely patronized and also looked down upon as someone who's possibly a prototype of a heroine by essentially a filmmaker like Shukhen Das. মানে মহিলারা ভীষণ করুণ অবস্থায়, either an unwed mother, like
the kind you feel sorry for.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely only feel sorry for women, unless you're making a film like in the 30s or 40s, like ki naam chilo, Nadia.
Fearless Nadia.
Fearless Nadia.
So Fearless Nadia was another kettle of fish.
Vedika Rani in Karma, who went to kiss her co-star in a film like that. It was a film called Karma by Zombie Talkies. But essentially, Ray brought in a new wave of women. I mean, a new concept, which you rightly said, the new woman.
Yeah.
Look at Piku. Look at Piku.
I haven't come to shots.
Ashwini Shankit not the role of Bobita, but Shondha Rai. Look at her.
Yeah.
She can.
Powerful as powerful
oh
can
my God!
be.
And Shondha Rai in Bagini and Shondha Rai in Ashwini Shankit, both of them play almost that. I mean, they become sex workers.
Right.
Here, the woman becomes a sex worker for a grain of rice.
Yeah.
Unknown. বড়দের কথা মানে এটা খুব অদ্ভুত লাগে আজকের পৃথিবীতে দাঁড়িয়ে এই কথাটা আমি বলছি বিকজ এখানে যারা রয়েছেন তারা জেন্ডার ওয়াইজ সকলে মহিলা, এখানে কিছু পুরুষ মানুষ আমরা রয়েছি, বাট দ্য ফ্যাক্ট ইজ ওই সময় দাঁড়িয়ে যারা ল্যাম্পপোস্টের নিচে দাঁড়াতেন, ল্যাম্পপোস্ট কিন্তু বিরাট বিতর্ক হয়েছে, তাদের ল্যাম্পপোস্টের নিচে দাঁড়ানোটা বৃত্তি ছিল, পেশা, পৃথিবীর সব থেকে পুরনো পেশা। এবং সত্যজিৎ রায় কিন্তু খুব নীরবে, ভীষণ নীরবে, যেটা তপন সেন আরো বড় করে বলেছেন, পার্থপ্রতিম চৌধুরী আরো বড় করে বলেছেন। পার্থপ্রতিম চৌধুরী সম্পর্কে আমরা কথা বলি না, ক্যান্সেল কালচার আমাদের, কিন্তু রাজুদা তিনি একমাত্র ফিল্ম মেকার আমার মনে হয় যিনি স্টার শেডিং নিয়ে কথা বলেছেন ওর ছবিতে।
হ্যাঁ, পার্থপ্রতিম তো বলেছেনই, কিন্তু সত্যজিৎ রায় একটা লেভেলে বলেছেন, সাবলাইম সাটল লেভেলে বলেছেন, তপন সেনা took it to another level, আর পার্থপ্রতিম took it to yet another level.
He faced a lot of criticism in Pratik Tunde because he was trying to be more open about it. After that, he became very restrained because he had to apologize.
Yeah, he did.
How do you react to this common question, and it's much asked? Did Ray make safe text films?
If you consider the dialogues in Hirok Raja Deshe as safe text, I don't know what is provocative. You see, so I wouldn't agree with this, that he made only safe text films.
Even Devi, I would think.
Yeah, you see, not at all safe text films. But there's one thing, Satyajit Ray was at one point of time, the only filmmaker in the world who did a lot of things himself, because the people in the West worked in a studio system. There was a scriptwriter, there was a cinematographer, there was somebody else doing the music, and he was doing everything himself. Which is why when you come to the titles, you will see Chitranatto, Songlap, Nirdeshona, Songit, all
everything by him.
Mrinal Sen went one step further, because at some point of time he was criticized for using gimmicks in his film. Yeah, he said, "You're using gimmicks of Western filmmakers in your film." He said, "Yes, I'm using gimmicks. So what?" So in his next film, he put script, direction, and gimmicks by Mrinal Sen. That was Mrinal Sen. You see, But that way Satyajit Ray wanted to play safe in a way. He didn't work with safe texts, but he wanted to play safe as far as his press interviews were concerned and others were concerned, except some parts where he was outspoken, but mostly he was very politically correct, you know.
We cannot do a session on Ray and not talk about his music. I know we don't have much time, but so maybe just a quick wrap up.
Yeah, Ray's music, as I said at the beginning, that in the initial films he had Ravi Shankar do his music. Then he was interviewed by Shomik Bandyopadhyay once. And then he said, why has it changed? So he admitted that Ravi Shankar was a big name, kintu Amar Trilogy kono chhobi Ravi Shankar purota dekhenni. So he did his pieces and I selected what goes where. So when I did that, I said, you know, then I might as well do the music myself, right? Which is why he started doing the music himself, and that continued for the rest of his films later on. Because he saw the flip side of working with big names, except Banshi Chandragupta, for him he had only admiration. And in 1981, there was a retrospective going on in the United States. I happened to be there in the US also. But suddenly Banshi Chandragupta died and the whole thing was aborted. And he had to come back. You see, he died in the US. He was a great art director. And he was a great help to Satyajit. That he always acknowledged right till the end. And even his cameraman Shubroto, he had to change because he didn't see eye to eye with him on certain issues.
After which Shomindu came on?
Yeah, absolutely. Because Shubroto was actually thrown out, so to speak.
Well, you've mentioned a couple of his documentaries.
Yes.
Maybe we could finish with his documentaries and his shorts.
Yeah, you see, especially the shorts. Shujoy raised the question of Piku. I think it's a very important film because it shows a kind of emancipation that was not seen in the kind of cinema at that particular point of time, without being vulgar about it. You know, because the kind of urge, the kind of feelings that he wanted to exhibit on the screen over there, they are a reality. But the moment you try to show them in an exaggerated manner, they come into the domain of the vulgar. So he was able to keep it at a level where he said what he wanted to say. But in this context, I also will have to say that in his short films or even in his feature film, he was a master of handling child characters.
Yes.
Absolute
that
master.
We've read several times.
Absolute master. You see in Piku, that little boy. You see in the Apu Trilogy,
and Shonar Kella.
Is that a short film? Which is
two. It's called Two. It's one of the greatest films. It's one of the greatest films made on this class difference and perspectives of each class, you see. Without any dialogue, it just shows in a short little span of time. So he was a master at handling child characters.
Subtlety.
Absolutely. And of course, the documentary films that he made were also very well researched, not only researched, but then he had a grip over the subjects on which he made films like The Inner Eye. Yeah.
Ooh.
Though here I must say that he was not very much enamored of the character about whom he made the film. He was commissioned to do so. He was asked to make the film. And he made that. He was not very fond of Vinod Bihari, or he was not a great fan of Vinod Bihari before that. You see? Yeah. This is something.
But it doesn't come through
It
from
doesn't
the
come through
work.
that way. No, not at
it
all.
comes through as a great piece
Not
of
at all.
work. My God.
Or when he was asked to make a film on Rabindranath in the 60s for Films Division, for which he did the English commentary himself, you see.
Yes.
And that was a great piece of work because he had a grip on the subject himself. You see, whatever he was making. Yeah.
On documentaries, I just wanted to know, what was it about the film Sikkim, which he made, and then which was not shown for years. And
I was
years.
expecting this question.
And as you said that, well, when we finally saw Sikkim, I really couldn't understand what was it that.
Nor could I. I saw it a few years back when it was shown at the Kolkata. No, it was
You
shown at the
couldn't
Kolkata
understand
Film
why
Fest.
it was not being shown?
No, why it was banned.
Why it was banned.
Yeah.
Was it a Films Division commission?
No, it was commissioned by the Sikkim government.
Okay.
Probably it was made during the Chogyals.
It was made during the Chogyals. So it was only because of politics. There was nothing untoward in it.
So for so long,
Yeah.
politics at the time which extended for so long.
Oh, Sikkim was annexed in 1970.
72,
Yeah.
and this film was made in the 70s. You see,
Okay.
so it was banned actually, but I don't see any element in the film which could evoke such a ban.
I haven't seen this.
It was quite a harmless film, not a great film in any case, according to
It
me.
just showed the life of Sikkim.
Absolutely. It was commissioned by the Chogyals, you see, so that was a kind of film. So that was a controversy which was probably created unnecessarily. And then, of course, if we come to his last three films,
Yeah.
uh,
Shakha Proshakha,
and I think there was a sharp fall in his thing.
He
But
then started with Goethe-Institut.
yeah, when it started with
Yes,
Goethe-Institut in
yes,
1983, yeah, that's when it
Actually
started.
started.
That's when it started. But the reason was also there that he was not keeping good health and so on,
Yes.
and so there were others looking after certain aspects of the filmmaking. But that is no excuse, you see. And here I have to share an anecdote, personally, which happened. I was at his place one day, and I was here sitting on a chair. Kiranmoy Raha was on the left, another film critic and great man, and a friend of Satyajit Ray's. And Satyajit Ray was working at his desk over there, busy with something. And there was a copy of the Frontline magazine with a cover picture of Satyajit Ray, with an excellent interview by Gauri Ramnarayan, whom I knew personally also. So I was looking at it and I was telling Kiran a lovely interview over here. And this was at a period post Ganashotru, for which I was part of the panel for Indian Panorama selection. And in the panel after the screening, I made a statement. I said, Manikdar, ei chobita bhalo hoyni. And 7 people came to hit me. You see, the rest of the jury members, he said, sacrilege, what is this? So I had to shut up. And I didn't know there was one of his chamchas also in that group who had gone and told him that. Yeah. So that day, when he left his desk and came to talk, acha ki ache bolo? Then I said, khub bhalo interview hoyeche Frontline. He said, ah. Then out of the blue, he shot a question at me, saying, তোমার নাকি গণশত্রু ভাল লাগেনি? Then, no, but I'm coming to another point. He didn't like criticism, like, okay, fine, quite normal. So he shot this question at me, and imagine me, poor thing, yeah. What do I do? I'm almost pissing in my pants, kind of, yeah.
And can't you say why?
No. But then, you see, when it comes suddenly like that out of the blue, you're taken aback, right? From such a person.
Personality, my God.
And somebody has gone and told him that. So I had to fight for time. I had to earn some precious seconds. So I said, mane, and so on. Then I got a brainwave, and I have this inherent kind of dushahos, as they call it. I have to ask NM, what's the English word? For dushahos? Yeah. No, not audacity. No. Anyway, whatever dushahos is.
What did you ask him?
No, I told him. I said, and I used to address him as Manikda with his permission before. I said, Manikda, you are from the world of advertising. To the end consumer, the quality of the product is important and not under which circumstances it was made.
Defiance.
He put his finger the way he used to, like this, looked at me, and I froze. After a few seconds, he said, I suppose you're right. And we never spoke after that about it. So this was one anecdote that happened, in an episode. But his last films, but at the same time, on the positive side, I will say that great filmmakers, world filmmakers, like Satyajit Ray, like Akira Kurosawa, or like Ingmar Bergman and so on, they stuck to their roots, basically. And that's why they were able to portray the kind of things they were able to portray. And these people in their later life became philosophical and wanted to preach a little bit of philosophy, which comes through in Aguntuk, through Utpal Datta's character and so on. It's a kind of preaching, it's a kind of philosophy that comes through. So their focus becomes that now maybe I won't be there eternally, so let me tell people something, through my life experiences. And that character which Utpal Datta portrays is something which tells us where we are going wrong, a lot, you see. And even in Chaka Proshaka, that the way we treat differently able people and so on. So these were statements from their experience. So I see the positive side of it, but as end products, they were certainly not the best of his films.
Well, because disappointment is what by policy. But I think that novel is so powerful that no one can make you film.
You see, it is a challenge when you are converting literature into cinema. And it is the rare instances of people like Satyajit Ray or a couple of others who have succeeded in doing good celluloid versions.
Permitted, like Rabindranath himself permitted during the making of Shirokumar Shara.
Right, and this is something I learnt when I was in class 10. We had something called a rapid reader, and our rapid reader was Guns of Navarone. And at the same time, Guns of Navarone was released in the hall. So our teacher, Father Carlson, took us to see the film. Even at that age, we felt that the book was much better than the film. And ever since, whenever I looked at something filmed literature, I always had this bias that the work of literature was always better.
Yes, I think it's fair.
The last part of Shatpaki Badha was better than the book.
But that's because
left it open-ended.
Yeah, but that is because
it's better.
That is because it was his own open-ended version of it, right? Yes. So films work best when you leave them open-ended. Like when Mrinal Sen made Ek Din Prati Din, everywhere he was asked, where did this girl go the whole night?
Yeah.
Who did she spend time with? And Mrinal Sen's answer was, not with me. That was his sense of humor. And he said, I don't know, that's not the subject of my film. The subject of my film is what happens when such a situation arises. Yeah. So the German filmmaker Alexander Kluge has also said that the final film emerges in the head of the viewer. And to that extent, it has to be left open-ended a little bit.
I just have a minute for this.
Sure.
When Gopalakrishna falls and Lokukumar dies, and that's the end of Gopalakrishna. After that, there was a lot of such questions to Bankim Chandra, what happens? And he didn't say anything, he was very reserved. His sister's husband, Damodar,
yeah.
Ami eta ligo. So ultimately he gave permission because of the family background. He gave permission. And then of course, Damodar Babu wrote that, okay, made a thing out of it. Then Bankim Chandra was asked to make a comment or criticism on this. After a lot of persuasion, he just said one line. Amar Shadhir Kopal Kusala Damodar Jale Bhashya.
But in many ways, entirely my opinion, I think Charulata in many ways transcends nostalgia.
No, it does, because he has said that,
we're talking about
because you cannot translate these things one to one. You have to transcreate.
Yes.
And that's what he did. So if you transcreate, then it works at a different level.
Right, and the visual medium actually helps.
Yeah.
In that scene when Chadu is writing about Amar Ram, that scene, or when she's swinging in the garden, and in the background there is this mother and child.
Right.
And this whole thing about Chadu immediately becomes clear. And you know, when I was watching the clip right now, when the cast was being shown, the sound that is used is
Momochit, yeah.
Which is so different from the first scene of what Charu
Goes
through.
Which
So
also,
almost like a
No, but-
juxtaposition.
but Satyajit Ray used that piece of music as a motive in the film. It
Yes.
comes as a refrain again and again, you know. Whenever something important happens, you will hear na 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 na.
So that, you know, revolt, which is going to come later, is there from the beginning.
Beginning.
So, which you get in a film, you don't get that way.
You won't get it in literature, yeah.
Questions? Anyone? We've had lots of questions
Yes,
actually.
The Feluda series with all this.
Yeah.
Is it a bit of a distraction for him?
No, it's not a distraction because he wanted to do a detective series in any case. He was fascinated with detective stories himself, right? And he wanted to do something for children. So it was something he did very consciously and with a particular kind of audience in mind. And of course, it hit a level of popularity that so many sequels are being done now of all these Feludas, you know.
Yes, I saw one.
But I didn't like Chiriyakhana. I don't know whether
Chiriyakhana is one of his weakest
I
works.
don't like Chiriyakhana.
But I didn't like it as a work of literature also.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Chiriyakhana and Kanchanjunga.
Kanchanjunga I did not understand. Unabashedly, I can admit.
I understand Chiriyakhana, apart from the plot, what else was there?
So once I asked Professor Vishwanathan, you know, what was Kanchanjunga all about? He said, I wish I knew. And he was like that because when somebody went, our theatre director Tamal Raichaudhuri went and rang the bell at their place to meet Ashok Vishwanathan. So the elder Vishwanathan opened the door and he said, yes. So he said, is Ashok in? He said, yes. So, can I see him? I'm afraid not. So he said, why? It seems he has made a film with that people have understood. So he's very depressed.
Oh dear. Any other questions from anyone? We've actually had a very interactive art, almost like an art session
It
today.
was
So
meant
it was
to be
really
that.
lovely.
No, but the Feluda thing was very consciously done because, you know, there were elements of these kind of stories which appeared in Sandesh and all earlier, you see. So there was a kind of trail of Satyajit Ray also going the detective path.
Yeah, but the villains were not really very dark.
No.
They were, you know, because maybe he was writing for
children. I think that is
You
a
see,
conscious
you see, which is
Me too.
Which
Me
is
too.
why
Yeah.
the end product was something where punishment for crime, okay, and it's not darker than that. You know, then there ends the matter. Everything is level. You know, you get your punishment. That's finished.
But he didn't do anything with this Professor Shonku.
No,
The CV.
no, he didn't do anything with this Professor Shonku. That was a great character.
These are separate discussions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Satyajit Ray is a writer and a writer.
Exactly.
That's a different.
I don't think we should try to.
No.
Thanks, Sonchita. Now those were my closing lines. Now you've left me with nothing to say.
Okay, I'm sure you have lots to say. But I mean, those of us who grew up reading Satyajit Ray have a thing about him as a writer.
As a writer, is a totally different person. Yeah, of course.
Okay, it's past 8:30. I think we have
is
to
it?
wrap it up. Yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. As we were just discussing, we only did films and only a certain part of the film, only one.
You have only done the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, actually, there's so much more. And as the person himself, his art, his skills in painting, drawing, sketching, writing, photography, calligraphy, everything about him is so larger than life that it is impossible to bring it down to a 1-hour discussion. So we consciously decided when Nandini and I And we met Raju and we decided that we'd only talk about this part. Even then we feel we haven't done everything that we had planned to do. There were so many other things to talk about, but maybe some other time, maybe another day. But thank you so much for coming, for interacting, for being here with Moksha Talks today, and thank you, Raju. That was an invaluable session, and it was really enjoyable. I'm sure a lot of us in this room are huge Ray fans. I am. I'm absolutely.
No, even though he was stood so tall and he seemed aloof and so on, he had a sense of humor. You know, I have to tell you one particular instance when the Calcutta Film Festival was happening. It once happened in 1982, the International Film Festival of India. It used to come every few years. Then again in 1990 it was held, and the opening ceremony was at Nozrul Manch, and the film being shown was Theo Angelopoulos' Landscapes in the Mist, right? So before that, a lot of delegates, and Jyoti Babu was there, Buddhadev Babu was there, Satyajit Ray was there, and Jyoti Babu in his typical style said, আমি এই ছবিটা কিছু বুঝি না, হ্যাঁ, বেশি বুদ্ধ দেখে ছবি, বসে বসে ওই রাইটার থেকে গেলেই ছবি দেখে, ও বোঝে ভালো, তো আমি বিশেষ কিছু বলতে পারবো না. Okay, that happened. And when Satyajit Ray was asked to speak, he stood up and said, ladies and gentlemen, many of you might have come 8 years ago. You are here again. In the meantime, a lot of things have happened. There are a lot more high-rises in Calcutta, a lot more telephone lines that do not work, a lot more potholes on the roads, and Jyoti Babu was kind of frowning. And then he said, after all this, he said, but we have the first metro in this country, which has started operations from 1985, and it can match with any metro in any part of the world. And then Jyoti Babu was relieved, and then he added, proving yet again that what functions best in Calcutta is the underground movement.
I rest my case. I really have nothing to say after this. Thank you very much.
Okay.